Welcome, everybody. This is another episode of We Are M&R. I'm Thomas Tringham, the Director of Marketing for M&R Companies. And today I've got Phil Trona from Pyre Press. And Phil, why don't you just introduce yourself and just kind of tell us a little bit about your company and where you're coming from?
Well, I'm the owner of Pyre Press. My name's Phil, obviously, and we're based out of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and we've been in business for about going on like 2 years now. So,
Very cool. Very cool. Now, one thing right away when I looked at your company, especially in social media in different ways, you have a very distinct kind of niche and look. And maybe you could just talk to some printers about that. Like, how did you get into that? Was that something that kind of like your company started within that niche, or is that something you kind of adopted afterwards?
sure. Well, I've been playing in bands for a really long time, ever since I was a teenager. So once I got into printing, and once I started working at a shop, and once I started doing my own printing, I was just surrounded by other people that played in bands and other people that were involved with music. So it just kind of like it was just like a natural fit for me. You know what I mean? Like that's what I'm interested in. That's the world that I'm involved in outside of printing. So it only makes sense that that's sort of what my business is based around. I mean, it's really just as simple as that. Like, I wasn't just like, oh, I want to work with bands. And then I just like started like cold calling people that are in bands. It wasn't anything like that. It was just like, this is what I'm involved with. This is what I do. And, you know, like it just started like kind of on a local level where it's just like, I have a lot of friends that play in bands. I play in bands. I go to shows, and then like, people see me at shows and they're just like, oh, that's Phil. That's the guy that prints the shirts. So then like, people like at shows would be like, oh, I gotta hit you up. I gotta send you an email. I got artwork. I want to do these shirts. You know what I mean? So it just kind of started like that and just kind of snowballed from there. Like just mainly through word of mouth. I've never really done any like traditional advertising outside of like, I guess, social media, which is kind of the norm now. So
Yeah. No, that's really cool. And I would say this, like band merch is a different type of merch, right? Like, because the people that collect and look for new shirts for their favorite bands, especially if it's like what would you say, like an alternative band or a band that's maybe a little harder to get the merch from, is like,
mhm.
those are some dedicated customers, man. Those are some people that they wear this stuff all the time. They love it, they collect it, and so I think it's an exciting kind of group of customers to work with, right? Because they got some of the most excited customers you're going to see, right? And you get a new album that comes out and everybody's got to have a shirt, It's like,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we work with a ton of bands where, they'll do like specific designs, like just for a tour or something like that. And like people will like, we'll post pictures of it and people will be like, how do I get this? Like, they're not touring near me, so I can't get this design. So, like, yeah, I mean, people are like really enthusiastic about the bands that they like and getting their merchandise. I mean, even when like, we have a web store where we do fulfillment for bands, and even when we do like a limited run of stuff for a really popular band, like when that stuff sells out, like we'll get messages, people are like, are you going to print more? When are you going to print more? You know what I mean? So it's like people are maniacs for it. I don't know. They just like, especially in underground music, like it's the merch is like a really big part of it for a lot of people.
oh
So
yeah,
yeah.
and it's funny, like this is really dating myself. My brother was a bass player in a band, and they were fairly popular around Central Illinois, Springfield area. And I used to roadie for him on the weekends, and we, I had limited merch or whatever, but it was pretty amazing. People, you get so excited about it, especially at a local level. It's a lot of fun. So, is this something where, like, did you kind of transition into it because you wanted more control over your own merch, or you wanted a higher quality? Because the one thing I noticed about your stuff is you print some really high quality prints. So I look at the quality and the detail and the attention to detail that you're spending. I mean, you can tell there's some real. Is that something that you always did from the beginning, like focus on the art and the execution, or is that something over time kind of grew to?
No, that was very deliberate, like right out of the gate for me, where it was just like I see like a lot of bands having, really bad looking merch, or like, maybe the attention to detail isn't quite there. Even something as like fundamental as like print size, like why is this print so small on this band shirt? Like it looks goofy, you know what I mean? So it was a really deliberate thing for me, like right at the very beginning, where it's just like I want to print shirts and I want to do it as best as I possibly can and as detailed as I possibly can, even on things that are like simple, even on like a one color design. You know what I mean? Like especially now for us, like a lot of even like the one color stuff is like extremely detailed. So it's like I want to make sure all of those details are being translated as precisely as humanly possible. You know what I mean? So yeah, it was very deliberate right from the beginning because like when I started my shop, I already had printing experience. So like I already had experience in a shop. I already had experience dealing with other people's shops because I worked for a supply company for a while too. So like I was already kind of involved in the industry and kind of like saw different things in the industry. So like I had like when I was like, okay, I'm going to do my shop now, I had a very specific vision for what I wanted like quality wise and what I wanted like aesthetically as well.
Yeah. Did you kind of have your focus on um, M&R from the beginning? Did you start on a different type of equipment? Did you start manually? How kind of maybe you can just kind of walk us through the story of literally how you started and kind of how it transitioned.
Sure. Well, I mean, the first equipment I ever used, the first like legitimate equipment I've ever used was in college. I took a screen printing 101 course, and they had like really old equipment. I want to say it was like a Hicks press and like a Hicks dryer, like really old. So that was like my first experience with it, and I just kind of thought that like all screen printing equipment was like that. You know what I mean? And then when I went to go work in a shop, they had like again like a Hicks dryer. So again, I'm like, oh yeah, this is familiar. I recognize this. I had the same thing in college. You know what I mean? But they had a little bit of a different press. They had a workhorse press, a mock press. So that was like probably one of the first like I guess like like it didn't have side clamps. It was like a little bit more modern, had micro registration. So like I got my hands on that thing quite a bit. And then that shop eventually grew into like having an auto and they had a rock auto. So like I got to like get a little bit of experience on that. And then when I went and worked at a supply company, like they were a dealer for workhorse. So like I saw a lot of the like workhorse automatics and manual equipment. Um, but at that time, when I was at the supply company, I was also like printing on my own, like on the side, just like make extra money. And just because like I missed being in a shop environment. So I had like my first press was just like a tabletop like Ryonet silver press, just because like I was printing in my one bedroom apartment. I didn't have a lot of space. It was cheap. I think I bought it for like $300. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then from there, actually, I bought my first like real manual off of Sean from Acme. I bought a Hopkins BWM 6 color 4 station from him. I drove up to Boston and I drove 12 hours overnight to pick that up from his shop in Boston. And I saw his shop and it was like all M&R and it like was clean and it looked amazing. And I was like, wow, this place. I was like so impressed by it because like I seen other shops before, but like the shops that I've been in at that time, like I've seen like M&R equipment before that, obviously, but it was like I felt like all the M&R presses like that I've seen like in shops like in Pittsburgh were just like it's like an old gauntlet that's like caked in like plastisol and spray tack, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yep.
Or whatever. But like, so like I kind of saw that and I was like, man, this shop looks amazing. Like this looks great. And like it kind of like led me down like a rabbit hole after that of like looking into M&Rs like manual equipment, automatic equipment, and like ancillary equipment. And I was just kind of like, yeah, this stuff is awesome. And then like I had a different auto before I got my Sportsman. I bought like a used Javelin. That's a whole other story. But I sold that. I got rid of that, and I went to ISS and 2018, I think 2018 or 2019, I went to ISS in Long Beach, and I was looking at the M&R booth, and I was just like sold. I was like, this equipment is so nice, it's so awesome, and like I loved it. You know what I mean? And I went out actually to to M&R's headquarters in Roselle, and I took the whole tour and everything, and I was just like, I loved that it was all American made, is all made in house, and like all the equipment was like right there in the warehouse, and they were like doing like printing. They were doing like R&D on like the Striker when I was there, and like the digital squeegee and everything, and I was just like, it felt like a company that I wanted to grow my business with. You know what I mean? Because it's like, all right, I'm gonna buy this machine, and it's gonna, any one of them are gonna be great. Workhorse, Rock, M&R, Anatol, whatever you go with, it's gonna print. They're all gonna do the same thing. But it's a big investment, especially for me. Like, that my press is the nicest thing I own. You know what I mean? It's the nicest thing I own, because it's like, it's the first piece of brand new screen printing equipment that I ever bought. So it was just like, I was like so like fixated on wanting to make the right decision. You know what I mean? And it's like, okay, I'm gonna have this press for the next however many years. Like, I want to make sure that I'm making the right decision. I want to not just buy something from a company, but I want to make sure that I'm like partnering with a company that I can grow my business with. Because since then, I bought a Starlight.
Yep.
I have a Sprint 3000 on the way. You know what I mean? So it's just like, I want to make sure, like, again, like, it's the same thing as when I first started my shop, of being deliberate with wanting to work with bands, being deliberate with wanting to have attention to detail and high quality. It's like, I want to also be deliberate with the equipment that I'm putting in my shop. You know what I mean? I want to think that through. And, regardless of whatever that is for like any shop, I think it's important to be deliberate about it, and important to see it through, because like, I've been to like a lot of shops where they have like, they'll have this brand of press, this brand of dryer, this brand of exposure unit, and it's so mix and match. And like, that kind of mentality in a shop like makes my brain hurt, because like, I'm like, really, like, consistency is like really, really important to me. You know what I mean? And like, as that equipment ages, like, I don't want to have to call this company, this company, this company, this company when I need to get replacement parts, service, or whatever. If like, all of my equipment is relatively the same age, and there's any kind of issues with it 5-10 years down the line, I want to be able to call M&R and be like, or whatever company it is that I'm working with, and be like, I'm having this problem with this thing. By the way, come check out the rest of my equipment while I have a tech here. You know what I mean?
Oh,
So
yeah.
it kind of made sense to me, just trying to think of my business long term, to, work with M&R and keep everything at my shop universal and consistent.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, I think, there's a perception out there, where it's people can get opinions about different types of equipment. It's interesting, because I went to a couple events, even prior to COVID, obviously. I went to a couple
Right.
events where I just got to network with different printers, and people are bashing this brand or bashing that brand, and it's just like, that's not the, I have never approached it from that way. Like, the whole goal is to help printers grow. Like, we're trying to help printers grow. We're trying to, figure out what your needs are. And I mean, I don't feel any, kind of issue saying we have the best regional sales managers in the industry, hands down, for sure. Like, people that understand the industry and can say, I've got 20 examples in the back of my head of companies like yours that I've seen grow from where you're at to really big and very successful. You know what I mean? So they can basically give you a map. They can give you a roadmap. They can tell you what the right equipment is to get at your stage and help you grow. And they're not going to try to sell you something that you're not going to need and you're not going to use. They're not going
Well,
to just
and that was the biggest thing for me with M&R at first, was like, I went to Long Beach and I saw the G3 and I was like, holy shit, I want that one. And they were like, well, how many people are at your shop? And I'm like, you're looking at it, it's me. And they're like, you don't need a G3. You don't
yeah,
need it.
yeah.
But you also could probably not get a Diamondback either. You know what I mean? So like, that's why I landed on like the Sportsman. You know what I mean? So it's like, I didn't feel like I was being like taken advantage of from like oh, this guy wants to buy a machine, like, let's just sell him a machine. He wants a G3, like, let's sell him, like, you know what I mean? It felt like they were like, well, hold on, like, what are you doing and like how many people are at your shop, how like what do you like, what are your orders like, you know what I mean? It just
Oh yeah.
it felt like I was like cared about as a customer. So like that was like the biggest thing for me, at least with M&R. And that's not to say that like any other companies aren't like that or didn't
Oh
take a
yeah.
similar approach.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I guess like, I was just drawn to M&R,
Well,
for
yeah.
all those reasons.
Yeah, for sure. Now, I mean, maybe to pivot a little bit, one thing I've heard through the grapevine is you print a fair amount of water base. Is that correct?
All 100% water based.
Yeah, yes. I mean, and I think that makes you kind of unique amongst printers because still to this day, there's quite a few printers that when they think of water base, they think problems. So maybe
Yes.
you could just speak. Maybe you could just speak to was that something again right from the beginning? Did you start out with water base, or was that something that you said, wait, no, I got to do this. Like I got to do this way.
Well, I learned how to print with plastisol like most people.
Yeah.
Um, but as I started printing more, especially when I was like interested in just doing the whole like side hustle thing, I like started to develop arthritis in my wrists and in both of my hands.
Wow.
So printing with plastisol became extremely challenging. Like it's just like it was just really hard, and it put like a lot of strain on my body, on my joints.
Sure.
Uh, so so I leaned into Waterbase partially because of that, but the other reason being is, like I said, I was also working for a supply company, and they were focusing a lot of their attention at the time, and they still do, with Waterbase. They were like bringing on lots of different types of Waterbase stuff. They were like sort of, uh, I guess, talking to a lot of customers about Waterbase and trying to like break down that stigma that it's this like super difficult thing that no one can do, basically. So I learned a lot about it, and I learned a lot about like the issues to look out for just from working there, and like being able to get my hands on this stuff a lot easier, because when I was working at a shop that was plastisol, it's like, obvious. I mean, they had like a couple samples of water base, and I tried it out a couple times, but I had no idea what I was doing. You know what I mean? I just tried it. But obviously a shop that's like has like an auto and like a couple manuals and a bunch of people, they're not going to just flip a switch and just be like, all right, we're doing all water based now. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So
No. No.
so once I was able to like kind of experiment with it a little bit more, and especially once I started printing on my own, I was able to just be like, all right, I'm going to buy this quart of discharge, and I'm just going to like try it. And it just like,
No.
it took a lot of me just like ruining shirts, messing stuff up, ink drying in the screen. I mean, all the issues, every single issue, um, to really just like get it down. I just like, it's like anything else, man. I mean, I just practiced and practiced and practiced and practiced until I got good at it. And like I had customers that were like patient with me and were like willing to like take stuff that like probably wasn't perfect. You know what I mean? Because they just like, I guess believed in me. You know what I mean? So like
No.
those were both really big things. But like kind of the other thing too was like, when I was printing, like when I moved out of I was printing in a 1-bedroom apartment. I moved out of that apartment. I was printing in a 2-car garage. Well, I didn't have any running water. So like, it's kind of hard to like
Yeah.
clean plastisol if like, cause you got to have like all those chemicals to like clean it up. And then you have to be able to like rinse those chemicals out somehow. Like it just didn't make sense for me to do. You know what I mean? So it's like I could just keep a massive jug of water by my press, and when I'm done, I could just scoop all the ink out and just like put the water in a trigger spray bottle, spray it, wipe it all down, and then like I'm good. You know
Yeah.
what I
Yeah.
mean?
And one of I've said this probably before on different interviews, but you think about it in a sense like I came across water base from a different angle. And we used to do a lot of jiu-jitsu, a lot of grappling, like ground wrestling and stuff like that. And we would get these shirts on these, from these different events, and they'd have this big slab of white on there. And if you're wrestling somebody and you're getting sweaty and you got this big slab, and I would imagine it's the same if you're playing in a band, and you got this
Totally.
slab of vinyl on your back, it's just not, you're not going to go pick that out on a Saturday when you want to go, you know what I
It's
mean?
uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I
so it's
mean,
just like, you know,
Yeah, it's the exact same thing with band merch, especially like with the stuff that I'm doing that's like full color, you know what I mean? And like the print is like huge. Like
Hmm.
pretty much every single design that I print is like at least 13 inches wide by 18 to 20 inches tall. That's a
Wow.
huge print. And if you're printing with plastisol, I mean, yeah, you can thin that plastisol out, but it's still not as breathable as like discharge, which is soaked into the garment. You know what I mean? So it's like I remember like when I first like started out and I first did like one of the like earliest like full color long sleeves that I've been like doing for these past few years. Like I remember like I posted something on Instagram and some guy was like bulletproof print dot 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 and I was like, you're so wrong. You don't even know what you're talking about. You're
You're
so
like,
wrong.
damn. All right.
Yeah,
Got
yeah.
this for you.
It's like it's actually not. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, yeah. I
Well,
mean, it's
I can totally relate. It be and in one. I mean, this is kind of a silly analogy, but I went into my walk-in closet the other day and it was dark and I didn't want to turn on the light because it was late and I wanted to grab a quick shirt. I wanted to change into a shirt. I reach in my drawer and I could tell what prints I had in the drawer by just feeling the surface of the shirts where they're folded. And I went all the way to the end because I knew that my favorite shirts are at the end and they're all the discharge ones because
right.
those you can't feel the print. So right away I'm like, oh, I want one of these, and I grab it and I pull it out, and I thought about it later, and I'm like, yeah, those are the ones that I want to wear, like that, because it's comfortable, you know. And that's not to
Totally.
say that there isn't a place, obviously, for a heavy print. A lot of people, it looks good, it's bright, obviously, but it's like when you're talking about like you said, large prints, oversized, and if you're talking about water base on dark, you're basically talking about discharge for the most part. I mean, there
Yeah,
is
discharger, high solids, sure.
yeah, there is HSA as well that they do a lot with too, which is fun. I guess I could switch one more gear, just something that popped into my head, which is fulfillment. You must have a pretty organized system for fulfillment. Otherwise, I think you would be feeling quite a bit of pain with as much random orders that you probably get in the middle of the night. How do you handle fulfillment in that niche?
Uh, well, I mean, for one thing, like we're extremely selective about our customer base through through everyone that we work with, whether that be fulfillment or just like a custom, like, hey, I want 50 shirts or 100 shirts or 1,000 shirts printed for my band. We're extremely selective about it. So it's like the fulfillment customers that we have are customers that we like either have already had a relationship with or like are heavily referred to by people that we do have a really good relationship with. So right there, like that is like a recipe for success just to start with. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And the other thing is my girlfriend, my partner who's involved with the business, she does all of the mail order. Like I'm actually sitting at her desk right now because it has like the best lighting. Because so like this is like you can see all the like stuff behind me right here. This is all like our mail order stuff. She worked for a record label for a few years, and so she got like all this experience with like ShipStation, how to pack stuff, all of that. So she
Mm.
does a really, really good job. She's really organized with everything. I don't handle any of that shit, honestly. Like, I mean, I handle the stuff with the bands. Like, I handle like the accounting of like, okay, this is what this band made. Like, I'm gonna pay them their royalties. There you go. But like the shipping and the emails, like she does all that stuff. Like,
Wow.
I don't have like the patience for it. Like, she's
Yeah.
great with it. So
Yeah.
like, really, I mean, that's like that's the biggest thing is just having like a dedicated person that's able to like work on that stuff all the time. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And as far as I mean, I guess last thought is like as far as art, is art like 90% or 90 or 100% provided to you, or do you have artists that you work with that you kind of, that either in your shop or that the bands work with, as like a freelance contractor? How do you get such, I guess, kind of magnetic artwork? Because you got some really intense artwork that you guys, work with. And is that something that you have always kind of, you know, worked with different artists, or is that something that's pretty much band supplied?
it's usually band supplied. I would say like I don't do any. I went to college for graphic design, multimedia, so like I can provide designs and like I used to a little bit to an extent. But I don't anymore. We don't provide any artwork for anybody. If people ask us for it, I just tell them no, because all the bands, like, it's usually like, we have this, this is our album cover that like someone made for them. You know what I mean? So I would say 9 times out of 10, they're supplying it because they already have a vision of what they want their, for lack of a better term, brand to look like. You know what I mean? And a lot of times, like, there will be like crossover between like artists. You know what I mean? Like, there are a lot of like really popular artists in underground music that, like, they'll do art for like this band, this band, this band, and those bands are all our customers. So it's like, oh yeah, we're printing this guy's art again. His art is awesome. Like, I kind of know the style of what it's like, so like I kind of know what to look out for with like the little intricacies and details and things like that. But yeah, it's all supplied by the bands, and it really works out to our benefit too, because like a lot of times, like, those artists that made that art will like see those shirts and be like, whoa, this printer just like reproduced my art,
Hmm.
like I've never seen it before, and then they'll come to us for shirts for their art. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Like, we have one of our fulfillment customers is like an artist. He's a long running artist for underground metal bands. Been doing it since the early '90s, and that was kind of how we got linked up with him. And he just like saw the stuff that we printed for like other bands, that he did art for, and he's like, "This stuff's awesome. Like, I want you guys to like print for me." And then he was just like, "Will you sell my stuff too?" And I'm like, "Yeah, of course."
Oh yeah.
So
No, that's a really cool thing, and it happens circular like that. Like, if you do a really good job, and I would imagine there's got to be some back and forth as far as somebody might bring you a design, but they might want it too small, so you got to consult with them and say, no, no, dude, you got to go big with this. You know what I mean? And like, there's
yeah,
probably a fair amount of that, I would think. It's like you're gonna know how to take what they have and make it really work on the garment, right? And so,
yeah, absolutely. And a lot of times, since we are so selective with who we work with, we tend to have really, really good, solid relationships with those customers. So, like, for example, if we have a band that is working on a really big release and they know that they want us to print all of the shirts for it,
mhm.
they'll send us the artwork like in a very like primitive and preliminary sense. You know what I mean? Like, the artist will send them kind of like sketches or like the start of it, and they'll like send it to us and be like, just so you know, like, this is the road we're heading down. And like, they'll show it to me and they'll show me the final version of it and be like, this is what we want to print. Like, what do you think of it? And then like from there, it kind of like, before it even gets on like an album cover, like, I can kind of be like, well, you know what, if you're gonna like print this also on a shirt, like, you should think about this, or you should think about that too. You know what I mean? And
Oh, yeah.
then it kind of like helps us like collaborate and like really, really early on. You know what I mean? So like, that's usually when we're able to do like our best work, because then it's like we're planning with the band, and I've already seen this artwork 1,000 times in different iterations, and then I get the final, and then I already know, like, okay, this is kind of how I want to separate this. These are kind of roughly what the inks are that I want to use. You know what I mean? So it kind of like, it helps us like uh make it the best it can be. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, yeah. Now, as far as, I guess I got two more things. I want to respect your time. Obviously, I know you're busy.
Oh no, it's all good. I'm done printing for the day, so we're good.
No, that was actually one of my questions, which is might seem like a silly question, but knowing a little bit of the band life like I do, because I used to chase my brother around a little bit and carry his heavy stuff, his big monitors. They used to weigh a ton. I imagine they don't weigh as much anymore. But um, how do you deal with the hours, man? Because, like, if you're playing, you know what I'm saying? Like, if you're playing, you're probably out like really late, and then you got to come back in the morning and go and print, right? So how does that
Yeah,
work?
sometimes. I mean, I don't know. I make the rules, so like, I do whatever I want. You know
Yeah,
what I
yeah,
mean? I mean, it's just me and my partner Vicky, like I was saying, and like, she is like really involved with music too. Like, she runs a record label, she promotes shows. So like a lot of times we're like out at this stuff together, or we're like traveling together to go and like go to shows out of town, go see like our customers' bands and stuff like that. So
Sure, yeah.
we make our schedule flexible together. You know what I mean? And like we're actually going to be like hiring someone. Hopefully, it's going to happen soon. Hopefully this year, like a full-time press operator to help me out. So our hours will be a little bit more tighter, because of that. As we start to like grow a team, but like at least for right now, it just being like the two of us, it's kind of just like
Oh yeah.
do whatever we want, I guess. You know what I mean? Like that's the good part about being your own boss, I guess, right? I
Yeah.
don't have to like really worry about when I'm going in. I mean, obviously, I have to be respectful of like the deadlines that we have and stuff like that. But like,
Yeah.
like for example, like today, I knew I was going to do this at 4:30, so I woke up earlier and got started printing earlier than I normally would, so that I could be done for this. You know what I mean? Like, whereas like if we were doing something like obviously with COVID, we're not going to any events or anything like that. But like if there was like a show or something and we were staying out late, then like I would probably start work a little later and work later on in the evening. Or like, we do have like a part-time guy, and he doesn't really come in until like 6 o'clock or whatever. So it's like, when the days that he's coming in, like I start later because I know I'm going to be here later, so
Yeah.
it fluctuates. And I don't hold normal hours here, obviously. I don't take walk-ins or anything like that because we don't really do a lot of local business. So it's just like, it's not like I have hours on my door and I'm like, oh man, I got to be at the shop by 8 a.m. because someone might be coming in trying to have some kind of consultation or like buy something. You know what I mean? It's just
Yeah.
not like that. And I that was another thing that was really intentional, is like, it's like if I'm starting my own business, I want to kind of be able to do whatever I want to do. You know what I mean? So I kind of set it up that way to where I was able to just like, not put too much pressure on myself to work 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, because I'm here all the time. I'm here on the weekends. I'm here in the mornings. I'm here at night. I'm here. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
So
Yeah. And I mean,
yeah,
I think that no, it makes a lot of sense. And I mean, it in a sense, it's like, well, part of it is, it's going to change as you grow, right? I mean, you're going to be able
for
to you
sure.
can do that in the beginning, and there's a certain amount of freedom to that, which is awesome. But then as you grow at a certain point, there's a tipping point where it's like, okay, now I gotta answer questions for employees. I gotta help stage orders, like, or I gotta make sure I do the sales calls or whatever. And that's part of this, I guess they call the seasons of your business as you grow, right? And you're
Hmm.
going to continue to do that and see that. What do you think? I mean, as far as COVID, I mean, touching on it, I don't, people are kind of COVIDed out at this point.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They're like, oh, another COVID story. Oh my God. And so not so much that, but looking at bans in general, one of the narratives I've been talking to people about, I'm like, man, when we're finally, hopefully they get a tipping point with everybody getting vaccinated or whatever. But I can't imagine there's any bands out there that don't want to tour, that aren't ready to tour right now. Like they're going to all
Everyone
want to
does.
tour. Yeah, everybody's going to want to tour at once. So it's liable to blow up like almost like we've never seen before as far as
I
demand.
Yeah, I think it's going to be insane. Like once that vaccine is out there, and like once people are like legally and safely and all that able to have events, I think every single band is going to want to go on tour at the exact same time. And
Yeah.
I think that's going to be tough, because I think it's going to be like, they're not really, since there's going to be such a high demand for it, it's going to be harder for them to get tours booked, for one thing. But for another thing, there's gonna be a higher demand for merch, I would think. I think everybody's gonna be like going on tour at the same time and all wanting stuff, and then it's gonna make us really busy, which is really good. So like I'm trying to I guess, kind of prepare for that. You know what I mean? Like that's why I'm kind of thinking like, I want to have more like full time help here. I want to like make sure like my equipment is solid and reliable, for that. But also just like this past year has been the busiest year we've ever had, which like I don't really understand. Like back like last March, I was just kind of like, all right, COVID, everything's shut down. Like everyone's canceling their tours, and I had orders in. People were like, "Well, we don't need this shit anymore." You know what I mean? And I was like really worried for like 2 weeks there. But then like after that, since we have the fulfillment thing, that has been like a really really big savior. You know what I mean? Because people are just like ordering stuff from us because they can't go to shows, but they still want to support their favorite bands. You know what I mean? Especially
Yep.
when those first stimulus checks came out, I was like seeing the orders we were getting in, and I was like, oh my God, I'm so glad that we did this, because like, since no one's going on tour and placing those like bulk custom orders, I mean, they still are, but not really in the way that they were before. People are like, new bands are like getting in touch with us and being like, would you be interested in doing fulfillment, or like, you know what I mean? So
Yeah. Yeah.
that has been really huge for us during COVID. So it'll be really interesting to see, I guess, what I'm trying to say is, when everything comes back, will there still be a really high demand for that online stuff,
Hmm.
or will it shift to back to like all these events, or will it be a little bit of both? Because I got to imagine too, like, people are probably going to be a little bit reluctant, at least some people will be a little bit reluctant to go out into huge crowds again. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? That's
Oh, yeah.
what I imagine.
Yeah. I think
And the other thing
it'll be a
too
while.
is, it's definitely, I don't think it's going to happen this year. But the other thing too is, like, so many small venues and bars and clubs across America are all closing. Like, I know here in Pittsburgh, like, some of the like the longest running venues that we had, they're gone. You know what I mean? So it's like, that's another side of it, is like, when people are able to do this again, will they have a place to do it?
Yeah. I don't know.
So
I mean, yeah, I think you're going to see a lot of impromptu venues kind of jump up, especially when it's warm.
probably,
You know what I mean? Like
yeah.
park concerts, this, that, the other. People are going to be looking for anything and anywhere they can go. I was just talking to my daughter 2 days ago. I'm like, okay, assuming COVID reboots, she's like, as soon as I didn't even get to finish the sentence. She's like, how many concerts do you want to go to, and which bands? It's like she's like literally signing them all up, like, and we're getting on all the mailing lists so we can get lined up. But I was thinking, did you ever mess with any live printing, or doing any kind of location type stuff, or any of that stuff? I could
No,
see it'd be a
I
little
never
difficult
have.
in your niche, maybe in a mosh
Yeah.
pit with a screen, but
Yeah.
it might be a little
Yeah.
hazardous, right? But
With discharge, yeah, smoking everybody out with all the formaldehyde. No, I I've never really wanted to do it. I mean, there have been a couple opportunities here and there where like I've been asked to do it, and I've kind of thought about it a little bit, but then it just kind of takes away from like the whole focus of my business. You know what I mean? Like, I would rather do this stuff for the events, for the festivals, for the bands, for the labels, whatever, and be able to like go to the event and just be at the event and
right,
be like, yeah, I printed those shirts over there. You know what I mean? Rather than like being there and printing, because like, I don't know, printing can be like stressful in and of itself. You know what I mean? Like, there's always a variable, there's always unforeseen circumstances. Like, my shop, I consider to be like a controlled environment, where it's like, for the most part, I have it under control. You know what I mean? Like, some things you can't control, screen rips, anything like that. But like, I don't want to get into some place and then it's like something that there's just like a variable that I can't control. It's just not. I know a lot of people do it and a lot of people do really well with it, but like, it's not something that I ever want to dabble in personally.
no, no, I hear you. Yeah, I mean, and it's definitely for a certain niche of people that like to, what would you say, the gregarious types that like to get out there and just print one at a time and get ink all over themselves, but it can be profitable, and again,
I'm sure
obviously
it
things
is. Yeah.
have to reboot, things will have to reboot. And in regards to like the future, looking at it, like you said, you're interested in maybe trying to bring somebody on to help you kind of handle some of the volume. That's generally what we see. And then there's also the pre-press part of it as well, where you can either streamline how you're doing your pre-press, and different things like that. Do you have any plans for automating any of your business? I mean, I know you're doing fulfillment now, um, doing your partner or doing fulfillment now. Is there any thoughts on how you're going to grow in the next
Yeah,
years?
for sure. So the biggest thing that I want to do, like equipment wise, is I really want to add a CTS. I'm so over film, especially with the kind of work that we're doing right now, where it's just like, each job has like so many films. You know what I mean? It's just like,
Oh, yeah.
there's like, it's like a full color front, so it's like at least 6 to 7 films for the front. and then sleeves, the back. It's so much. And like at this point, like I know that a lot of people try to save films and archive them. I just throw them away because I tried to save films for the longest time, and like I'd pull them out, and then there's like a giant like stain of some kind, like right where there's like a really fine
Yep.
halftone thing, and then I have to go print it, and then it's a film printer, so like of course it's going to take like however long for that one film to print, because again, I'm printing stuff that's like 13 by 20, so it's like this
Yep.
massive thing, and it just takes way too long, and it's just like I feel like I'm at least now at the point where I'm like it's not profitable to use all this film because the film is so expensive. I mean, like
Yeah.
I'm chewing through rolls of this stuff like it's nothing, and it's just like I really want to get that CTS, but the problem that I have right now is like I'm like bursting at the seams for space at my shop. Like
Right.
I have like I'm like just under 2,000 square feet. You know what I mean? So it's just like with all this inventory that we have, the auto, the dryer, everything, it's like I'm just like so tight on space. Like right now, like my dark room is like basically like it's not really actually a room. I have like a loft in my shop where it's like the dark room is like underneath it. I have like safe lights, my washout booth, but then like I have like a drying cabinet for like my 25 or my 2331 screens. And then in my bathroom is a screen rack with my 2536s and a dehumidifier. And it's just like, so it's like, it's not ideal. And there's not room for a CTS. So what I'm getting at is what we're trying to do is we're looking at buying a building, either buying a building or building a building. Ideally, I want to build a building, want to buy land, get like a prefab building, and just build like an ideal shop that's like way bigger than what we need so we can grow into it rather than grow out of things. Because it's just like at this point, I'm kind of like seeing the writing on the wall and being like, okay, we're growing. Every year I'm like adding stuff, trying to add stuff, and like running out of space, running out of this, outgrowing this dryer. Like, I mean, even with the press, like I'm like, why didn't I get a 12 color press? Like I bought an 8 color press because it was like my first big purchase, and I'm like, I was like really nervous about that overhead increase. But now that I've done it, now that I've taken that leap, I'm like, shit, like why didn't I get a bigger press? Like it
Well,
seems ridiculous now in hindsight, but so I guess my point is like I'm trying to like get us into a spot where we can grow into rather than grow out of, because we're growing continuously.
yeah, I mean, I was going to say, I mean, two things. One is I actually happen to know some people that can help you with some of that. So as far as the CPS and the, the bigger press or whatever you need, we can,
Yeah.
I know a couple people. So, I'll just, just to throw that out there. But then like in general, like, as far as growth and expansion, like you probably don't even need to hear this, but CTS is probably one of the most significant transitions that I see companies like yours make
Right.
in the fact that it really does take you from kind of crafting each order to staging orders. Like
Right.
all of a sudden you're just literally getting orders on a cart, getting orders on a cart, and all of a sudden that just blows up, and then that puts extra what we say horsepower or push to your production, because then your production's like it's not like, okay, is that order done? Okay, now it's good, now the customer likes it, okay, great. No, it goes to, okay, that order's done, now where's the next order, where's the next order, where's it, because a lot of times before that you're in this kind of much more labor intensive mode as far as crafting each screen, right? Each screen has multiple steps. You got to carry the films. You got to make sure you got the overlap and everything. And probably one of the biggest areas that people, it takes a while for people to realize is, which you probably already know, but it's walking around with film is actually a significant amount of time, like carrying the film around. And it's like that,
Yeah.
all that goes away. And so, especially when you start to get somebody else to do that work, then it
Mhm.
becomes a really big deal. Like, because you're basically, as one person, you can do 3 different jobs instead of
Right.
just one job at a time. You're not just taking one screen and exposing it. You're taking one screen, that one's going, and you're washing out the next one, and then you flip it, and then your next one, and then that job's done. And then you're on
Yeah.
to the next. You know what I'm saying? So it's like you can do
Absolutely.
it one person even part-time to do all the screens you need to stage for the day. All your jobs are staged, and then you're like, okay, well, all those are going to be done, and so now I'm going to stage the next ones. So it really pushes the throughput down the order chain. So it's exciting from that standpoint. Like I love to get people going on it because, you know, and one of the other beautiful things is with film, even if you're one of the best guys as far as using carrier sheets and all that, man, when you got that CTS, you just don't even think about it. You just make sure that screen's locked. You don't even think about registration anymore.
That's what I mean. I don't want to think about registration because I think about registration right now and I don't want to anymore. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like,
Oh,
and
yeah.
the thing you said about carrying the films around, like that's so true. And like thinking about the amount of time I spent just walking around with a film, like doing whatever the hell it is I'm doing. Because
Yeah.
the thing is like it's not that I didn't think about the flow of my shop. It's that
No.
space has always been my biggest limitation. So like there's only so much you can do with a flow when you have limited space, right? So it's
Yeah.
like, I have like I said, I have my dark room and then I have a loft. Well, my office is in the loft, so my film printer is in the loft. So if I go down the exposure and I like, especially now that I have the Starlight, I turn on the setup lights and I'm looking at it and I'm like, oh wait a second, this isn't right. So you got to take the film, go all the way upstairs, and it's also really slow. So it's like, okay, I'm doing a 7-color job. All right, the first film printed. Well, it's like I'm not just gonna sit here and wait for them all to print. Take the film, take it downstairs, burn the screen. You know what I mean? It's like now, like before with my old exposure unit, it was like 2 minutes to burn a screen. So like that was like a lot less, I guess, of me just like waiting for something. Where now it's like, my Starlight is like 14 seconds. So it's like screens burned and washed out, and I'm like, all right, the printer printed the registration mark and that's it, and it's just like moving. It's like watching paint to dry. And the other thing that I like recently learned through like listening to the Shirt Show, like one of the last episodes they did, was like I was noticing like having like registration issues with certain things, and I didn't realize since I have a roll fed printer, I was just like letting the film print out, and I think what was happening was the weight of the film
Yep.
was warping the film. So I would do like a 7-color job, but then like the last screen wouldn't line up. And I was like driving myself insane over why. Because it'd be like, okay, it's in up top, but not in the bottom. Now it's in at the bottom, but not in the top. And I couldn't figure it out. And like they said that on the show, like it was like a 2-second thing they said. And I was like, God damn it. That's it. That's what happened with that one job. So I stopped doing that since then. And it's basically like it's just like one of those things where you have to like baby it, like you have to like pay attention to it and like make sure it's like perfect and make sure the like print head isn't doing something like totally stupid. Like every now and then it'll just like splurt out a giant like blotch of black ink on the film and then it's like right on the thing and it gets all messed up, or like something gets like jammed even though it's a roll fed, and then it's like, oh, I thought that was printing, and then you go back to it and it's not printing. So yeah, man, I mean, the CTS, I definitely like really really see the benefits of that, and I really really want to add that. But for me it was like first I wanted to replace the largest really critical items in my shop. Like I wanted to have like a really solid press, really solid exposure, and a really solid dryer. Like I bought like my first gas dryer off a friend of mine, and I just used that as like a stepping stone because I needed something like bigger for like a larger capacity for like a really large job I took on this summer. But now I'm like, all right, this dryer is like 35 years old. It works. It does what it's supposed to do. But when something breaks, it's like, because it will happen. It's like an old car. I mean, you know how really old equipment is. You
Yeah.
got to go track down this old part that's probably original to the dryer, find the current one of that. And it's just like, I don't want to have to think about my equipment in the sense that like what's going to happen when it breaks. You know what I mean? So I guess what I'm trying to say is like I wanted to replace all those really critical items first,
Oh, yeah.
and then go to the CTS. So it's like now that I have that sprint coming, with the Sportsman, the Sprint, and the Starlight, I don't have to worry about, because my exposure unit before, it would just like, it would do all kinds of weird shit. I ended up like fixing it, but it would just like randomly turn off. The person that owned it before me like ripped the grounding out of the plug, so it would like shock you whenever you would like, yeah. I don't even feel right about like selling it. I think I'm just gonna like cut it up and like take it to the scrapyard. You know what I mean?
I could see that. I could see that. Well, I want to respect your time. Thanks so much for chatting with us. One thought is like, I don't know how you feel about people reaching out to you that want to talk about this niche, but I think there's a lot of printers that would benefit from kind of understanding how kind of serve this market, and because it is such a, it's such a growing market, because bands really, especially now, I think more than ever, need to have more direct control over their merchandise and have the more, you know what I mean, to get the value out of it versus
Yeah.
getting it from a central represent, from a publisher or something. So I think there's a lot of, from both sides of the aisle, printers that could service the market better, and then even events. Events. It's like a lot of events just really, really drop the ball in regards to merch. I mean, events might want to reach out to you and say, I don't know how much work you can handle, but I'm just literally saying, like, with the quality and the detail and your ability to execute merch, I would be really surprised as this kind of promotion gets out there and other things. People see your work, you're going to get people knocking down your door because they need quality merch, man. I mean, that industry is, as you know, is underserved. So hats off to you, man. I really appreciate what you do, and it's been great talking to you. I can't wait to touch. I have to touch back again, and we'll talk after you get your equipment in, and get some stuff rolling.
Oh yeah, totally. And just real quick, like you were saying, like about other printers, like wanting to reach out or whatever. Like, I'm more than happy. I'll talk to any printer. I love to talk about printing. I genuinely love it. And like I mentioned earlier, I worked at a supply company for like a few years, and I got to talk to printers every single day. I mean, they would talk about issues, they would talk about things that were working, that weren't working, and so like I'm happy to talk to anybody, because like I learned from a lot of really, really talented and knowledgeable people. So the least I can do is try to pay that forward and pass that knowledge along, because one of the things that I've always like thought about, like, I mean, there are a lot of people I feel like in the industry that like feel like they want to like be gatekeepers for certain things, or they have secrets or whatever. Like, that is like not my mentality or my approach to printing at all. Like, I'm more any printer that like wants to learn about whatever it is, like discharge, water base, equipment, anything. Like, I'll pass whatever I know along. I'll pass to anybody else. And like, I love to learn. I learn something new about printing every day. That's why I love it. You know what I mean? I think the shops that are the most successful are the ones that are like open books, the ones that like really want to learn and continue to learn and like stay humble about it. So like, yeah, if anybody wants to ever like send me an email or a message, I'll talk to them undoubtedly.
Well, what's the best way for people to reach out to you? And maybe there might be some bands out there that want to reach out to you. How do you like to get inquiries and
Like professional inquiries, like from people that want to place orders, the best way to go about that is just through our website, pyrepress.com. We have like a quote request form on there that it just has all the info we need to be able to provide an adequate quote. And then if there's any like printers that just want to like talk shop with me, they could just message me on Instagram at Pyre Press, and I'll see it eventually and respond when I have a chance. So
in between gigs. All right.
yeah.
Very cool. Well, if you haven't seen the episode, and I don't know if you do any gig posters, but Mei Yang, she's a gig poster queen, from there. She's got a shop that's really cool too. So, yeah, well, it's great talking to you, and I look forward to
Likewise.
chatting with you again. So thanks a lot for your time. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity. It was great talking to you.